Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Let me ask you something before we begin. When was the last time you looked at your phone, scrolled through your contacts, your messages, your social media, and felt that quiet sting in your chest because there wasn't anyone you could really call a close friend? Not someone to just pass time with, not someone to send memes to, but someone who truly sees you. If that question hits a little too close to home, stay with me, because today's story is for you. There is a lie that society tells us over and over again. A loud, shiny, perfectly filtered lie. It says that if you don't have many friends, something must be wrong with you. It says that popular people are happier, healthier, more successful, and more lovable. It says that being alone means being broken. And after hearing that lie enough times, you start to believe it. You start to wonder if maybe you are the problem. Maybe you're too quiet. Too weird. Too serious. Too different. Too much. Or not enough. But what if I told you that having few or no friends does not mean you are broken? What if I told you that, for some people, solitude is not a weakness, but a sign of depth? What if this chapter of your life, the one that feels lonely and confusing and heavy, is actually shaping you into someone powerful? This is not a motivational speech filled with empty lines. This is a story. A story about a person who once believed they were broken because they stood alone. And how that belief almost destroyed them, until they finally understood the truth. There was once a young person who blended into the background of every room they entered. Not because they wanted to be invisible, but because attention never seemed to stick to them. In school, groups formed quickly. Laughter echoed in hallways. Inside jokes were shared. Plans were made. And somehow, this person always seemed to be just outside the circle. Close enough to see it, far enough to never fully belong. They tried, of course. They smiled when they were supposed to. They laughed when others laughed. They said yes when invited, even when it felt forced. But the connections never lasted. Conversations stayed shallow. Friendships faded as quickly as they formed. Eventually, the invitations stopped coming. The messages slowed down. And then, one day, the silence became permanent. At first, they blamed themselves. Every night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations in their head. Why did I say that? Why didn't I say more? Why can everyone else connect so easily? The questions had no answers, only echoes. Social media made it worse. Pictures of smiling faces, arms around shoulders, captions about best friends forever. Stories of late-night hangouts and weekend adventures. And there they were, alone in their room, phone glowing in the dark, feeling like the only person in the world who didn't get the memo on how to belong. Loneliness is not just the absence of people. It is the presence of doubt. It whispers things to you when no one else is around. It tells you that you are unlikable. That you are forgettable. That if you disappeared, no one would notice. And the longer you sit with those thoughts, the more real they start to feel. This person began to shrink themselves. They spoke less. Shared less. Expected less. They stopped reaching out because rejection hurts less when you don't try. They told themselves they were fine being alone, but deep down, they weren't fine. They were hurting. Then one day, something small happened. Not dramatic. Not life-shattering. Just small enough to go unnoticed by the world, but big enough to change everything for them. They were sitting alone in a quiet place, watching people pass by. Groups laughing, couples talking, friends walking side by side. And for the first time, instead of feeling jealous or bitter, they felt curious. Truly curious. They started to observe, not with judgment, but with awareness. They noticed something interesting. Many of those people, despite being surrounded by others, looked tired. distracted. Some looked uncomfortable, forcing smiles, checking their phones, nodding without listening. Some were talking, but not really connecting. Some were together, but still alone in their own way. And that's when a thought crossed their mind for the first time. Maybe loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. Maybe it's about how deeply you connect, even with yourself. That thought didn't magically erase the pain, but it cracked something open. It created space for a new question. What if being alone is not a flaw, but a phase? What if it's not a punishment, but preparation? So instead of trying to fix themselves, they decided to understand themselves. They spent time alone, not scrolling, not numbing, but thinking. They asked hard questions. What do I actually enjoy? What do I believe in? What kind of life do I want, even if no one is watching? At first, the silence was uncomfortable. When you're alone, there's nowhere to hide from your thoughts. No distractions. No noise. Just you and your inner world. And that can be scary. But slowly, something unexpected happened. The silence started to feel peaceful. They began to notice things about themselves they had never noticed before. A deep love for learning. A sensitive heart. A sharp intuition. A creative mind that wandered into ideas others never talked about. They realized they weren't boring or broken. They were different. And different doesn't always fit easily into crowded spaces. Here's something no one tells you. People who have few friends often feel deeply. They think deeply. They observe deeply. They don't connect with everyone because they are not meant to. They are wired for meaningful connections, not constant ones. The world often celebrates loudness. But it desperately needs depth. As time passed, this person stopped chasing friendships just to fill the silence. They stopped trying to be someone else just to be accepted. They started working on themselves, not to impress others, but to respect themselves. They read books that challenged their thinking. They learned skills that made them feel capable. They took care of their body, not for attention, but for strength. They built routines that gave their days structure and purpose. Slowly, their confidence grew, not from validation, but from self-trust. And here's the most important part. They realized that having no friends forced them to become their own. To support themselves. To understand themselves. To stand on their own feet. While others leaned on groups, they learned to lean on their values. This didn't mean they stopped wanting connection. Humans are social beings. Wanting connection is natural. But now, they wanted the right kind of connection. Not the kind that drains you. Not the kind that makes you feel invisible. But the kind that feels honest and mutual. One day, without forcing it, they met someone. Not in a dramatic way. Not through some grand moment. Just a simple interaction. A conversation that went deeper than usual. Shared thoughts. Shared silence. Shared understanding. And then another. And another. Not many. Just a few. But those few felt real. That's when it finally clicked. Friendship is not about quantity. It's about alignment. It's about timing. And sometimes, you don't meet your people until you become yourself. If you have few or no friends right now, it does not mean you are failing at life. It might mean you are outgrowing old environments. It might mean you see the world differently. It might mean you refuse shallow connections, even if it costs you temporary loneliness. Loneliness can break you, yes. But it can also build you, if you let it teach instead of torture you. Think about it. Some of the strongest people you admire spent long periods alone. Not because they were rejected, but because they were becoming. Alone time gave them clarity. It gave them resilience. It gave them an inner voice that wasn't drowned out by the opinions of others. When you have fewer friends, you are forced to confront yourself. And if you survive that confrontation, you come out stronger. More grounded. More authentic. But let me be honest with you. This path is not easy. There will be days when the loneliness feels heavy again. Days when you wish someone would call, text, or just ask how you're doing. Days when you question everything you've learned. On those days, remember this. Being alone does not mean you are unloved. It means your life is asking you to build a strong relationship with yourself first. You are not behind. You are not missing out on life. You are simply walking a quieter path. And quiet paths often lead to the most meaningful destinations. The truth is, not everyone is meant to have a large circle. Some people are meant to have a small, powerful one. And some chapters of your life are meant to be walked alone, so you can hear your own footsteps. If you're watching this and thinking, this is me. I have no friends. I feel invisible. I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not unworthy of connection. You are in a season of becoming. This season is teaching you independence. It is teaching you discernment. It is teaching you self-respect. It is teaching you how to be whole without applause. And one day, when the right people enter your life, you won't cling to them out of fear. You will choose them out of alignment. So don't rush this phase. Don't shame yourself for it. Use it. Build yourself. Learn yourself. Strengthen yourself. Because when you finally do connect with others, it won't be because you needed them to feel complete. It will be because you wanted to share the completeness you already built. And that kind of connection changes everything. If this story resonated with you, if you felt seen, understood, or even just a little less alone, then this video did its job. Remember, your value is not measured by how many people surround you, but by how deeply you understand yourself. Stay strong. Stay patient. And never forget, being alone for a while does not mean you will be alone forever. It simply means your story is still unfolding. Thank you for being here.